خوش.
Stephen, are you there? So he's not, we're not hearing him anymore. Okay. I guess it makes sense for he's off now again. It makes sense for me to step in and talk a little bit more about how I see the objectives of the group. And basically, as Stephen was saying, the purpose of the forum, I think, in general terms, is threefold. The first is to share key readings and ideas. And so this is part of a kind of consciousness raising amongst ourselves with respect to what democratic confederalism is, and how we can go about trying to plant the seeds for a democratic confederal international, so to speak. At the same time, thinking about specifically the social ecological dimension. So think about social ecology as a paradigm and its relationship to the political project of democratic confederalism. And so that's what sharing these key readings and ideas is all about. And then the second main objective is to strengthen communication and solidarity among international initiatives. So different initiatives that are somehow have an elective affinity with the paradigm of social ecology and or the political project of democratic confederalism, ways in which we can strengthen the networks of communication amongst ourselves. And then the third is to build bridges between, in particular, democratic confederalism as a political program, the climate justice movement and the ecological movement more generally, and other social movements. So those are the three main objectives. Jihad, do you want to translate that?
Yeah. دبي سه أو مهنا سه يعني سه باشا مهنا يعني سه أهداف مهنا جياك أم أفكارن وبرتوكون وإيسر باشي إيكولوجيا بي أمانة بلاكن يعني باشي إيكولوجيا ولجور بروجي سروكاتي وبروجي بوكشين إيكولوجيا اجتماعية يعني كيف أفكارن تخوزن بلاكن إيد ديان تخوزن تأكيلي ورتي وتأكيلين فاكن ورتي و باشي إيسافي باشي خابتن تفجاري إيسافي باشي خابتن تفجاري إيكولوجي وإيساسيون يعني تخوزن إنه تضامن يعني تخوزن تفجاري يعني علاقة كوني يعني قاردوني شيء بكن إذا تفجارون غيره يعني أم كنا من بنجس ركي شيء بكن وتفجارون حميرو.
So this forum is taking place under the rubric of Peace in Kurdistan, initiative very much promoted by Stella, as we all know. But Peace in Kurdistan has an ongoing project of articulating what self-determination can and must mean in the 21st century. So this forum, we conceive of this forum as part and parcel of this attempt to articulate self-determination for the 21st century. We're interested in making connections between struggles for self-determination around the globe, but thinking about self-determination in a different way, in a new way. And here we take our self-determination. Öcalan in particular has emphasized that the propagation of grassroots democracy is elementary. He's come to understand self-determination as radical direct democracy against the state. And he has elaborated a political program and project of democratic confederalism, which encompasses the struggle against illegitimate and unjust hierarchy in all of its manifestations, including the domination of men over women, the domination of any ethnicity or sect over others, and the domination of humans over nature. So Jihad, do you want to translate that?
Yeah. و پروژه‌ای به پرشکلیکی پیس این کردستان یعنی آشتی لکردستان و لبریتانیا چیبی و هدف يقوي أساسي إنه بروجي في حق تقرير مصير وشتك وشني هي الجهانة تخوزن تكليها في دربكم في يتخوزن بروجي حق تقرير مصير ويعني دبي ما بنجاهي في بروجي ساروكوني وجلينوني أو بروجي ويجي حق تقرير مصير يعني بنجاهي خوا ديمقراطي وديمقراطي مثلا ديمقراطي مباشر وبنجاي خوا خوازه انه بروژه خو حق تقریر مسی خوازه چه هرمی ها به درباس بکه و خوازه آزادی جنه و سروک یعنی کره همبر پروژه حق تقریر مسی جبر پروژه ای وای حق تقریر ای کلاسیک ای وای حق تقریر مسی کافن ای کلاسیک برای دولت در چهار سردین لسروک برای برنگ دینه انالیزه کرد و برنگ دینه alternatief دونین.
So Öcalan's program and project of democratic confederalism in turn is very much influenced by the paradigm of social ecology. And it was, of course, Murray Bookchin who first advanced the proposition that the domination of humans over nature was rooted in the domination of humans over humans in his 1964 essay, Ecology and Revolutionary Thought. It followed for Bookchin that building an ecological society would require an assault on hierarchy in all its forms and an embrace of a radical direct democratic alternative, one capable of confronting and ultimately overcoming the domination and exploitation embodied in the system of the capitalist nation state. The paradigm of social ecology, linking the fate of ecological society to that of a revolutionary political project of local direct democracy, operating against and tending towards the transcendence of both capitalism and the nation state, was thus born. And I think what's important to stress here is that what is distinctive about this paradigm and project is how it provides a holistic assessment, connecting the struggle against climate catastrophe to the broader struggles for radical transformations of material and social power relations, indeed for a comprehensive, radical democratic alternative to capitalist modernity. Jihad,
Yeah.
you want to?
Yeah, I just wanted to say something like I cannot translate everything that you said. I will just translate like a few
That's fine.
the main
That's fine.
ideas. Yeah,
Yeah,
this,
exactly.
yeah. إذا déjà وسروك يعني و بروژه خوش بن باندوري فلسفي بوكشين أبو إيكولوجي اجتماعي إيكولوجي جواكي بيرد بيجان دبي وبوكشين علاقي خو ويعني واش قدام إيكولوجي أنا لذاكر تقول أسباب إيكولوجيا سبب خوي جوهري إنه و هيمنة و هرمي جواك شيء كه هم برخدا و بنجه يعني برسكريك إيكولوجي نا يعني حياة برسكريك إيكولوجي حل بكن جرج أم فنا چه هرمي هي وچه چه هيمنة هندر جواك دم درباس بكن وواجي بري الدولة دي رشور السنة نوبة يعني بري يعني دولة قومية رشور السنة نوبة بري يعني بين خسارية ديمقراطيك بري ديمقراطية مباشر بري كومينات عند بفي رنجي ام كونه في چهار سری ایکولوژیا چهار سر بکن.
So then the crucial question is, how do we get from here to there? How do we plant the seeds for a democratic confederal order to come into place? And I think here, one thing that has been stressed by Öcalan himself, but also by Murray Bookchin before him, is the necessity of a revolution in consciousness. And so I think that the purpose of a forum like this is to be thinking about how we can create these international networks that are at the same time promoting this revolutionary consciousness amongst ourselves. And I think that our method in part is going to be trying to learn from the promises and the limits, or challenges of existing struggles with an elective affinity to the paradigm of social ecology and the program of democratic confederalism. And so this means centering very much the experience from a critical perspective, a perspective of critical solidarity with the Kurdish freedom movement itself. And I'm very happy to see such a wide interest amongst the Kurdish community in this meeting, but also going beyond the Kurdish movement, thinking about other movements as well, trying to reach out to other movements like the Zapatistas, the municipalist movement, Cooperation Jackson, La Via Campesina, the landless workers movement, struggles for social justice and informal settlements across the continent of Africa, for example, Nairobi, which I've been working with, the abolitionist movement, anti-war movements. So be thinking about the ways in which these movements already embody or incarnate, prefigure many of the ideals of democratic confederalism, and think about what the promises of those movements are, learn from those movements, but also think about what the limits and challenges those movements face. Jihad?
دوی حیا ام جفر هر نوار یعنی جوه پرسکریکی هم در باز بکن گوت اوجلین یعنی گرانی خدا سر شورش ذهنی و بری ویج بوکچین دا سر و مثلا یعنی گرک شورش که ذهنی شه به و حیا ام کنن خوی آستیگیدن پیراجی یعنی گوت ام گرک نه انو تنت تفگری کردی استفاده بیمنن ام گرک برنگی رخنج نیزه که به کو پرسکریک هبن وقرن هم قال لك تفجير ديني جي وحركات ديني تفجير ديني وشورش ديني جهان تشاد بان قرق وانا استفاده بمنن حياه بكونن منظوره كي اوفا بكنو في برسكريكي برنگي كي جهاني در باس بكن.
So in a nutshell, the way that I conceive of this forum is as an effort to plant the seeds for a democratic confederal international of sorts. Strengthening the connections between democratic confederalism, climate justice, and other social movements, and both finding inspiration and thinking critically about the dilemmas faced by different movements in different contexts. That requires us also thinking hard about the scenarios envisioned with respect to what a transition to democratic confederalism could entail. I think that this is something that's important for us to think through together, to think through with movements that are situated differently in different places, in different contexts, and be thinking about the ways in which we as an international network can provide a kind of internationalist framework for situating and thinking about the difficulties that people face in particular contexts. So I think that the challenge then, let me just finish with this, the challenge, I think it's important for us to distinguish ourselves from alternatives, in particular kind of social democratic reformist alternatives, which things like the Green New Deal and the like, think about the ways in which the democratic confederal approach is distinctive. But I also think it's really important and imperative that we focus on the specific ecological dimension without losing sight of the broader questions of revolutionary tactics and strategy. The stakes are extremely high. This is the task for our generation, and the fate of all the generations depends upon it. Ecology or catastrophe, as Bookchin put it, it definitely is. So Jihad, you want to say sum that up?
يعني حياة قوية أصلية جبر أم تخصص في تفجيران استفادة بيبنن منظورة كي كوني أوفا بكن و actually I forgot the things that you said.
That's okay. Try to remember the
تنا شبركو ريكورد مكردية يعني بشتي ودكارين ترجمة بكين يعني ورقر بكين
تمام هيثم يعني في من شر يعدا كري او تقريبا او جود اللي برنجي فرقوت يعني دو جود ام جارك يعني شت تفجر هبن وكيموسي ونو ويعني برنجي رخنا نيزك به حياه كون برسبكتيف كي اوفا بكن يعني شو تفجر جون ام جارك استفاده بين.
Okay, I think that's enough for a general introduction on my part. Stephen, I know you got cut off there. I don't know if you want to continue a little bit more before we open it up for the discussion.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. I'll try. I was thinking about the sort of practical approach, which kind of very much hopefully follows on from what you're saying, Jeff. Thinking about selecting an agreed paper or two, or maybe a short film or podcast. I suppose one of the advantages is that we can, in many cases, we can probably have the authors of these pieces of work to contribute. And I'm thinking a kind of in terms of a critical approach, as you were mentioning, a what, focusing on a particular theme, a so what, thinking about the significance of that theme in terms of the broader discussions that we're having. And then finally, I think quite importantly is a now what is, how can we connect this into some practical mutual aid and activism. So that was the approach I had in mind. I think that was, there were other things I was going to say. I don't think I'll spend too much more time now having lost a bit of a chunk of time there in the detail. I suppose some of the practical considerations. I thought Darnell's point about keeping it relevant to issues that are ongoing. I think that's a really interesting tension, actually, isn't it? Is to what extent I suppose in one way it's kind of, I suppose for me it's kind of plugging into creating a sort of a stable infrastructure that's kind of agile and able to respond to more immediate issues as they come up, getting the balance between that rather than being reactive to lots of different things. So I think that's a really interesting area to think about. I suppose thinking about how we use this as a springboard for action rather than just a talking shop, but obviously embedded in the literature and in the ideas. And then maybe thinking about some of the practical aspects today as well. I mean, obviously things like time zones, translation, some of those other issues, so that we can make it inclusive and in a practical forum for people to participate in, and thinking how often we want to do that, and the forum itself would be something I'm also interested in. Whether the network can in a way complement and reflect the structures of democratic confederalism itself. So can we have male female co-chairs, for example? Can we rotate? So some of those ideas I think would be part of the scoping discussion, really. So I'd be interested to see what other people thought about those proposals. There's probably quite a lot from myself and Jeff for the time being. Really sorry for those connection problems there. I've been Zooming for about a year and I've not had these problems in today.
It never fails.
I've got an Ethernet.
It never fails. It never fails when you need it most. The technology comes down. But I think you managed to express the main points nonetheless. So thank you. Yeah. So Jihad, do you want to?
Edine Stephen Hunt such na pratik goten. Dugwa yunam chow kon ve teklinio chebekan mino ki video wani zaman gwa video chebekan sabam kon vesh mandi balokan سر پرتوکی خواه جبر پرتوک که داخل گو ام کنن ایوا پرتوکان یعنی باشتار بونه او نجی کنن سر پرتوکی با خفن لسر قلت لسر انه ميديا حيكون متشر رولة بيزة يعني اعلام تشر رولة بيزة حيكون فبرس كده كانوا برفراه باللابكن وجو جرا ام يعني برانجي براتيك جي كور بكن نا بشوري بكن يعني جرا مش براتيك جي بكن وبرسكريك ترجمه مثلا فو اخافتني ترجمه و اشتقدينش بيش نياكر قلت مثلا امكان بيني روجافا يعني بيني امكان سروكاتي هف باشي بكن يعني جنو ميربه تشتي كوش جبرت خواز ام بن سيستم كونفدرالي دخابتنا جراك يعني سيستم وجنو باجي يعني سيستم كوس إيجابي يعني هاف باش سيستم ريفابري.
Okay, excellent. Estella, you wanted to say something?
No, not at this point, no.
Okay. Maybe then we open it up for some discussion amongst us. Yeah, Dimitri.
Well, I don't disagree for a second with the three main objectives that Jeffrey articulated. And while I have enormous respect for the Peace in Kurdistan campaign that Estella is very much involved with, and Stephen Hunt's very important work, I have two questions to ask. First, first of all, the three main objectives that you have articulated very well are very ambitious indeed, and require, of course, a whole infrastructure and a whole coordination and intense intercommunication core network that requires very careful attention, and therefore certain individuals have to play a key role. So that has to be recognized and kept on top. And it's not going to happen in any effervescent kind of way. It takes very, very hard on the ground work to pull it together. But my other follow-up, I mean, I've said something that is obvious, but I think it had to be
very
said.
important. Yeah.
But the other thing that I'm concerned about is Öcalan himself. In what way does this important initiative also take into account the fact that this human being is imprisoned and not under the best conditions? And how do we do what needs to be done better to free him as an individual, to get him out of there? I mean, I think that is so important, and I think we all recognize that. But in the various campaigns that we know are going on, that specific objective is one of many, and I think it has to become more focused. And I'm wondering what your thoughts are. How does that fit, if it fits at all? And if it doesn't fit, how do we integrate that? Because it's all very well to talk about ideas and the implementation of ideas, but we are very fortunate that this architect of these very important ideas is still alive, is still very functional, but he's cut off from us, and we need him very, very much, as well as the Kurdish movement, of course, but we need them also. So that's my political concern.
Well taken, very well taken. As you know myself, I'm very implicated with Estelle and Peace in Kurdistan and the Freedom for Öcalan campaign. I think that one of the important ways in which we can help Mr. Öcalan is by taking very seriously what his ideas and his political program are, because the Turkish state and the NATO powers, what they want to sell us the story that Öcalan is a terrorist. But if we say, in fact, Öcalan is the inspiration for the alternative to capitalist modernity, the only alternative to the spiraling of tyranny and violence spreading across the Middle East and much of the world, in fact, this is a way of very much legitimating Öcalan as a key thinker. And also with respect to the Peace in Kurdistan agenda, a key, as we know from our delegations and the Imrali delegation, a key role player in any possible peace in the Middle East. So I think that is also something that should come through very clearly when we think about the question of how do we transition to a democratic confederal order. But I also think it's important to be realistic with respect to what it is that he's up against in terms of the incarceration regime and the whole war on terror apparatus, which would have to be effectively dismounted for him to see his freedom. So I think that thinking about putting the figure of Öcalan with the persecution and of the Kurdish freedom movement more generally at the center of our thought about the tactics and strategies of a transition to a democratic confederal order, I think is inseparable from our agenda. With respect to your first concern, I think that we all have to give lots of credit to the energy and inspiration that Estella Schmidt has been and continues to be in Peace in Kurdistan. And I will continue to work closely with her as long as she's willing to continue pushing forward. And we're really happy to have Stephen on board with this in this particular forum. And I think we want to keep it open from each according to their abilities, but obviously Estella is going to be a central player here.
I just
Can
wanna
Jihad
add-
just
I
quickly
just wanna
translate
add one-
that?
I
Can
just want
Jihad
to
just,
add one
okay,
footnote.
wait, one second. Can Jihad quickly translate that so he
Yeah.
doesn't forget what's been said, and then you can ask the next question.
ديمتري قلت يعني أورمانجي وسي أورمانج دوني قال لك خوش ما استبلي دم قول سؤالي إيه قوفي من الددنا إيه كي تشوا بنية تحتية خواي يعني بنجهي فيه كي تشوا ببي وتشوا كي تنسيق ببي ورتي وكاسوناندو وكي إنسان هنا كي يعني إنسان كي تشرولي بيزنا يعني فصولو أخويا كيبو او خود دیامین لسر وجلیم گو و ام یعنی گرگم شقا بیر نک انو و رومانو و پروژه ام نقاش کنه سر وجلین کنه وید وجلین یعنی ایسانه که و حبسه دنها یعنی که چه رولی یعنی که چا یعنی ام که چه رولی وجلیم که و پروژه چه بیم نویم تخوازن چه بکن یعنی گرگ وجلان یعنی او به یعنی جمع مرکز به يعني شخصي ويام كتشوي آزاد بکنه وچه کامپانی هم بکنه حیا جبو آزادی وی و ده سوال خوابون ده پرس خوابون ای دیامین جيف برسف دای که گوت يعني و چغه کم افکار وجلین برنگ جدی ببن و ام کنن تطبیق بکن يعني فوق بخوا انه وجلين شرعي ديكي انه ام كونن طرح بكن الشرعي وجلين لها بر جهانه ياك اذا دي ام كونن يعني جملات رو بيجن وجلان نا إنسانك إرهابي ون وقت بيجن إنما إنسانك فيلسوفة إنسانك مفكر كونن أفكار خوي برخواشنا وبرسكريك يام نا عيش دكان كونت يعني كونت درباس بكن بأفكاري في ميركي يعني بأفكاري وجلين يعني فو ونيقول.
Dimitri, you wanted to add something.
Yes, I think we have a lot to learn from the South African campaign and the freeing of Nelson Mandela. And I'm wondering whether some of you folks who are concentrated in and around London, England, where the African National Congress had a presence, like Connor and Stephen, whether we can attract the attention of some of the knowledgeable people in the South African struggle who can help us also articulate that component of what we want to do over and above the three important objectives that Jeff has articulated, to also have a focus on freeing Öcalan himself. I'm just wondering whether we can make a connection, an organic connection with some of the veterans or some of the actual activists today who can help us articulate tactics and strategies around that campaign that successfully freed Nelson Mandela. It's a suggestion.
پیشنیار قدینه که گود یعنی گرگ هم تجربه جنوب افریقیا و تجربه ماندلا استفاده ببینن حیا هم کنه و تجربه ونن و سر مثلا و مجاری هم که چه سروک آزاد بکنه استفاده ببینن و گو گرگ هم تکلی و کسانا را بکنه مثلا و تکوشینی آزادی و ماندلا کرن حیا نا ایسان پر و داره هنه مثلا اکتیویستن هم کنن و را تکلی کردن بلکه ما استفاده ببینن.
Okay. Estella, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I mean, I wanted just briefly to not hold this up. But if you're looking at peace in Kurdistan and what I said in the beginning, why it was set up in the first place, it was the connection with Öcalan himself through, you know, the build-up of the movement that we had for, you know, from all these networks that we have created within, you know, peace in Kurdistan. We have, for example, the Imrali delegation coming up, where some of you are all participating. So we are connecting the issues and the struggles through the peace in Kurdistan itself, through the international initiative, through the Kurdish movement of the KNK, through all the networks that we have in Europe and in the Middle East. So this is the discussion to push it through the ecological issues. Now, one can link this. That's what, I mean, and the importance is that those participating are aware of these networks and create this solidarity within their own movements and spread it to make it more global. I don't know if it makes sense what I'm saying here. Okay?
Yeah.
I mean, it is to disrupt the borders of one campaign, and we are repeating the same slogans and so on and so forth. No, to relink, through the work that each one of you is doing individually. If this is now in relation to academic work, if it is work on the ground, if it is as a journalist, if it is as an activist in another movement, it's, to spread the consciousness that nothing is separate, that we are all in the same thing to challenge the system itself, but at the same time create a spirit of hope that the Kurdish movement is giving to the world. So this is, and everything is linked. Dimitri, we are doing the Imrali delegation. We are raising issues in this campaign, which are part of the discussions, the ideas, and the, peace movement in a way. That's what we are talking about, isn't it? I would say that, the working together itself is the important part, and that we have now people on board, from the African movement. We have these people on board. They will read this. They will get it. We have connections here in London. Okay. Yes, we know people from the ANC. We are in contact with people in South Africa, in other parts of Africa, in Sudan. We are in contact with people in Nigeria. Okay. So we are spreading this as good as we can.
Nairobi.
To the connections that we have already made. Okay.
بكورتي استيلا برسف داكي قوت يعني برای اوشتی ایل کردستان کمپانی ایوا اورگانیزه کری ایوا جوین اورگانیزه کری برای و تکلیه خود لگه حمی داری هنن افریقی هنن نیجریه هنن نیوا کاریت دبیجی برای هم دکنه یعنی ویدو بجبو ازداتی سروک جی هم تخبتنه یعنی و تکشونه و علاقاتانو هم برای يعني ام سرف و برای مکری و بود حسون هم دکنه يعني بكورتي و أوقاب.
Okay, I think Amber wanted to come in and say something, and then we have Salah and Sarah also have their hands up.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, so yeah, I would like to definitely lend support to what Estella was just saying. I think there's room for having a group that are really focused on ecological issues, with the understanding that, of course, the work of Freedom for Öcalan is mainstream throughout many different campaigns and many different groups that might exist and initiatives. But yeah, I just wanted to mention briefly, because there's so much resonance here with a new research center that we are working on establishing, based physically out of the Institute of Development Studies because of the infrastructure that it provides, but really formed as kind of a network of networks that's governed on what we're calling a confederated polycentric model that draws a lot of lessons from democratic confederalism and various cooperatives in Europe. It's called Future Natures, the initiative, and it's focused on ecologies of commoning. And a lot of movements don't necessarily see themselves in terms of commoning, but it's, as a framework, it's a very useful way of thinking about how to build affinities across movements and across different projects that are politically aligned, particularly in terms of defense of communities against enclosure and violence on the part of the state and capital. So we're defining commoning as practices and ways of being and doing things that involve relationships, practices and values that communities, self-identifying communities use to govern, reproduce, and defend either tangible or intangible resources or ideas or other forms of social wealth. And what we're doing is we're trying to provide infrastructure for bringing together basically a network of networks of groups and initiatives that, you know, share these affinities and values with the objective of, well, we have a couple of objectives. We're using, trying to use kind of multimedia storytelling as a method to diffuse ideas and subjectivities, and, you know, kind of build that broader consciousness that Jeff was talking about earlier. But we're also building infrastructure, particularly, you know, information infrastructure to build kind of a knowledge commons that can foster collaboration across groups, across academics and non-academics, to, you know, build those forms of mutual aid and mutual value that can lead to kind of putting together kind of ecologies of commoning across different groups. So yeah, I just wanted to just briefly describe that. It's a little bit complicated, but we're going to be ready to kind of launch it early in the summer, and right now we're doing some website building and really focusing on just talking about what we're doing and seeing who might be interested in being part of this. But yeah, this is a really exciting meeting, and I just wanted to bring it up because there seem like so many synergies and kind of common goals that, yeah, I think it would be really great if we could think about working together.
Very much so, and it speaks to Dimitri's first concern, which was, you know, what's the infrastructure for this kind of thing? And if this is something that you already have institutional support for, and you guys are doing this, I think that it makes a lot of sense for us to join forces.
Yeah, we've got a lot of support for things like fundraising, for, you know, things like web design, for publishing,
Yeah.
or we have like a full-time like communications person who's, you know, ideologically aligned. So
yeah, sounds excellent. Sounds excellent. Okay, Sayla, you wanted to say something?
Not sure. Are you talking to me?
Yes.
Ah, sorry.
Sorry if I mispronounced your name.
No, it's Saleh. Saleh, yeah.
Saleh.
Well, I just want to say that I was listening to Darnell, who said we need to connect it with what's going on now, and he mentioned Ukraine, and I think we should be making a connection and not shy away, because something happened in Sudan at the moment, something happened in Burma, something happened in Yemen, and these are all relevant and connected, because so the issue of Sudan is very interesting, because some Sudanese are making connection with Ottoman's ideas, because they have a struggle against a centralized state, and a state that's been captured by the military, and a military that's really dominates the economy, and the military doesn't care about ecology. It's more interested in controlling power and using violence as an instrument as well. So some of the people in Khartoum are even linking up with Öcalan's ideas. You know, they're thinking about it. Because I mean, I was, you know, if you look at it in Sudan, what's going on, one of the most powerful things to emerge is, for some time, but now, is the resistance committees. There are 5,000 resistance committees, and they are thinking about how to organize in urban areas, maybe in urban areas. I don't know much about it. We've got to be there to do some field research, but they are also connecting up about what's the solution. It's connected up to also what Öcalan does to about capitalist modernity. But what we see about capitalist modernity is also the failure of the nation statism. The nation state in Africa has failed. What we are saying is that it's dominated, it's centralized, top down, doesn't connect with communities, doesn't listen to communities, doesn't address the needs of communities. Whether you're in Kenya, you have the same problem. Growing inequalities, doesn't listen to it. And there has to be a solution. And Öcalan's vision does provide a way forward.
Mm.
And it connects up the whole notion of popular power, participation. And I must say, Africa has a long history in this, by the way. And people don't know about African history. During the liberation movements, many new things happened. So if you look at Guinea-Bissau and the ideas of Amilcar Cabral, people like that who fought for independence, who died for independence, they came up to stable ideas of popular participation, popular power, of linking up with the peasantry, of listening to them, and not having a separation with the ruled and ruler, trying to get away from hierarchy as well. So I think those ideas have resonance across the world.
Yeah.
And because of the failure, if you look about capitalist modernity, about imperialism, it created a crisis for us as well. And I must say lastly that we confront corporate power. Underneath this, corporations are very, very powerful, and we take on the corporate power through the idea of democratic confederalism as well. It provides an alternative, the way forward.
Mm.
Sorry, can
Very
Jihad
good.
quickly translate that?
Yes, yeah. قود جرق أموا إنه نقاش إذا كان جرق إنه حدث إنه هذا جريدا مثلا قول السودان السودان إذا جريدا وكوري السودان إذا بيشورش السودان اليمن إذا مثلا لسه تجربة بالسودان ساكنين قول مثلا السودان قود برخدانية كي هم بر دولته هم بر عسكر هم بر شدت دولته وقود إن وادر كوميتاي جو آفاد کنه کمیتی مثلا جواکی وتخوازن بینی مجلسی روجاوا چید بن اون راحت راحت آفاد کنه گواجی مثلا افکاری سروت اوجلین دگریدای وگوا خویا دکه انه پرسکریکا کین و پرسکریکا و انجام چه پرسکریکن انجام افلاس دولت قومی و افلاس حداث راسمالیه و هر دی نکن بر صف جواکتن جبر ویا که نه برخدانی دبن خوازن انه هیزه وگن جواکه خوازن جواک مشارکه ببه برنگه کی فعال یعنی گو گرگ ام و تکوشینی نهاج دبن ام گرگ و کوری ام که بکنه گرگ ام هفته گریده.
Sarah, you wanted to say something?
Yes, I mean, probably like very many people who are involved, I mean, I got involved with Kurdish politics because of the positive things that were happening and that it was really inspiring that it wasn't just always on the defensive, but that they were creating this positive movement. And yet so much of the stories that we read about what's happening are all about the defense against everything that's awful. I mean, I'm responsible for producing these stories each week, so but because things in all parts of Kurdistan are so difficult at the moment that we don't read very much in the foreign press, but what we do read all tends to be sort of stories of struggle, stories of difficulties, stories that the Kurds are fighting back. They're victims, but they're fighting back. But we're not really reading very much of positive stories of things that are happening and the positive changes that are being done. And I think one thing that a group like this can do is try and get those stories out there. And there's several people in this group who are actually involved in the sort of greening of the ecological movement in Rojava. We read a lot of stories all the time about environmental destruction, but we need to read more stories about the changes that are being made. And I know it's very difficult because they're often not so newsworthy, and that they're projects that are on a long-term thing. So there's not, something's happened now, it's got to be in the news agenda. But I think it's really important to get those positive changes of things actually happening on the ground as well coming out, both things happening in Rojava and things happening in other parts of Kurdistan too.
Jihad, you want to?
كردي قوت ام ناخذن انه بس قول الشهر هي كردستان بر مثلا كوري دجوارتي انا مثلا شهر برخدانيه خود پاریزنه دفاعه و ام تخوزن وچی رو کن ای نو پر دیبسن وچی رو کنن و ام تخوزن چی رو کن پوزیتیو جی بیسن یعنی ای پوزیتیو ای ایجابی یعنی چه کاری باش دبه لور چه تغییرات دبنه گرگ ام تخوزن باش به اول چیروکی باشی در کفن یعنی نه بس چیروکی دجواری و زحمتی و اینو لور دبنه.
Ziwar, you wanted to say something?
بله جارك التري غرباش أزي بكري بأفهم موسيقى بيسوار جرينا
دبيت مشكلة
يعني راسي أم ما مستين جو كرن آخرين هر أم شوا ويركي دانما يعني أم شجاع عند السرقو أم هنتشتين جو تاني يجبو موقف فكر بون ما شوا لسر أصل كردستاني أم فدراسيونا كي كسكا أوابكن سازين إيكولوجي أوابكن يرو روج دما سازيه كي فيرنجي منتدى فيرنجي شد به ما مستين فيرنجي تدن السر أصلا جهانی دخوازن تکلی دینن و وزارن کار و خباته کی واید درباره بری جهه افنا دستیم گلک خوردکی لروجای کردستانی هریکیم بس بیشم شغل روش هر شب پرچه کردستانی همان روشه ده و راستی هم تشتنگو بحثی کردن اما بیشتر لروجاوا و کی پروژه کزین کس اما ده دست بکردن یعنی چوا و کی ما قلت انه تاني ريفابريا خسر عاليه درباره مثلا ايكولوجي ده وين كاربين ريفابريا خسر نجي حكومات مركزي شخب بصاله مثلا ايكولوجي هاتمونا بيش جوهكرن وراستي جي جارا بيشي مثلا ايكولوجي كتنا روجا مدى وكي قال ريا امبيجن طرحه اوجل عنده ولسر ويناك نزي 10 ساله عاليه بروباغندا عاليه بروردا او نادا شيبو ايرو روج يدي ام كارمشن بروجيكت زي كسكي وكي انجامكي فكرن اوجلا يعني هر شخصي سازيه كي جواكا سيفيلا اللي دي سجين هجر او زمين تنبانا هجر او هو قاسينا كتب روجا بيدا دبيغو بروجيكت وكا بينال جمجنا حتى بابي ذكرن ازينا بس كم دات ورق يعني هجر استمام جبكم
يم تمام yeah they said that it's very nice to see these all people from different background and from different places coming together, and we see that as a very kind of a support, and it gives us like a courage also, and we are so happy to see that. And he talked about his project which is called Green Tree, which started a few years ago, and he said the reason that we kind of built this project is because of the Öcalan's ideas, and he kind of said we should not like let the administration and the central government do everything. We also like as a people kind of should do this activism and these projects. He said, but at the same time it's because of the conditions that of Rojava and all of these ideas, we could build this Green Tree project. So without these conditions, like without this activism, without this education that had been existed in Rojava, we could not do this project.
يعني روجاواي كردستاني تلبت روشا امبيجن يعني دوسيا ايكولوجي دوسيا كي هبونو تنبوني تشبويا يعني هاي اصلا كي بلو كريزه كي برجدي هي لانجما بوليتيكاين دمدريج ينجو همش عليه دولتها تركب سرمهات المشاهدات همش عليه رجيمه بحث ده ايدي مثلا كريزه درخصنا بترولي مثلا قد كرنا اوي يعني نزي 108 جم وروبار وكانين قد درباج باكوري كردستاني درباسي روجاواي كردستاني دبون هموش عليه دولتها تركب هاتنا زواكرين هذينا غطاء نباتي يعني شينكاي بجاره غير كشت بترول دولتها بعث برنجي كي بر عشوائي درخص لإنجام ويدنها لسوريا سري صدي حشتي كسن كانسير دكفن سرطان دكفن كسن هرم جزيرنا خلق هرم جزيرنا تاني غطاء نباتي الجمع 1.5 جسدية ستاندر حتى حشتي حجدها جسدي جرجها بيجدها حتى حجدها بجبوينا كمثلا إيكولوجيش بوما مثلا جيان تشبونا رنگ خبراستني تشبويا يعني جي أظهرين إيدي يعني ميزوبوتاميا أفجيجو جي شاندين دستيك بون تردورا چمه دجله و فراته ایدی دبنا جین گوه چول ببن جبر جیان ده نماده به بیرنگی هاناکی يعني اللي جمع كريزة أم بكري division.
He says that this project is that we are doing the ecological crisis that we are facing. It's a question of its life and death. And he said we are surrounded by states such as Turkey, who's we have the crisis of oil. We have the crisis of like water. We don't have like water, and also the Turkish state, like recent developments, they fought against and in a ecological manner, and at the same time he criticized the Al-Ba'ath regime in terms of dealing with the ecological resources that in Jazeera, like he kind of talked about that historical background. And he said that about 80% of people they have been affected by cancer because of this ecological crisis that we have in Al Jazeera alone. So I think so there's question of like ecology and health is going on in Rojava.
بله هذا بكورتاتي بيجي مجرد داوي مداخله بكم يعني ام بيجي انسياتيفا كاسين كاس وكي تفجركي جواكا سيفيل حتى باصل كي مازن وكا رخنا لسري بريا خو سرجي مرود كاري بخي تشارچوبه وكي سهلدانا كي جواكي ايكولوجي مخالف معارض جبر ربي بريا خو سرجي اريد نافشر ديجي بس جرك هين زدتر بالكشاند وانا لسر علي ايكولوجي هين زدتر جرينجي دابانه دا بيشتيجو كزين كاس كده رجوا جلدا هنا كيري بريا خسرجي هن بريار دان هن قال البراتيك عبتن لهين جتيرنا كديسة أم هودتن هودتن ضغط وأفكارية جاري هفدورة أم روشة باش بكن بوستيا ما ب هاتنا جم هفدول سر أستا هر شهر پارچه کردستان و ام کاربن مینا فدراسیونه کی ایران جی هین فرهتر وکی پروژه گو ایرو لدار دکریم منتدای کی برفره جبو همو کردستانه به آوکرون راستی و ام کاربن روشا راستقینا یا ایکولوژی ج بحوال خوره به دوست داره به پارو بکن وش تجربه نوا سود بگرن جبرج آلیه رامان ايكولوجي دا هر خاصي فكر كينو بالجهان بقشتي لذي هريما ما فر تشتكي نوا حتى دستيك دماد هاتا السرد هاتا اخافتن قالك كساوكا حنك وكا بيكنوكا كي دقرت دست هكر ولاتي كي شرط ده هي يعني كريزان مان هي كريزا افي هي تشاو بحثا فرسنا خوزاي دكي فجبوينا كي جاليه هشمنديه دجي جاليه پرتوك اليه سمينار جاليه اكيبين يعني پروردايا اكيبين كارو خبات لسر عرضه بدن مشاندن هروسا آلافين راگهاندنه يعني ایرو روش مجعلية راديو روشنا يعني جي كوبار دربار ايكولوجي دا لوی هرمي وري وشاندن بزمان خلق هرمي حتى نگوراستي جي اشمندية ايكولوجي اتشه ببه بگومان جبوب سرخصنا وی کاری سر عرضه جخو پراتیک کارو خباتی مدمشه چه بخواستن امی جبوینا که دناوا کارو خباتی دم.
Yeah. So he kind of voiced some criticism against the administration. They said that they did not take ecological crisis very seriously. He said we, like as a civil institution or as a civil movement, we did this green tree movement, and then people like used to come to us, and also he said that we need to work together, like as a civil society and the administration. They should kind of like work together and coordinate with each other to face the ecological crisis that we are facing. Also, and he said when the ecological crisis, when the Rojava revolution started and there was education concerning the ecological crisis, many people, they used to just make fun of it because they did not know about it much. So, but now I think there is kind of some awareness, and he said, so it will be so good if we try to work together and build kind of confederation of like movements, and to build federation within the Kurdistan and on also the regional power and international sphere. Also, we said that we need to do seminars, education, and try to publish books in the language region, so that people can understand and can be, and in order to raise awareness concerning ecological crisis.
Very good. Sonia, you wanted to say something?
Yes, actually quite long. Firstly, I think that if I go straight to the beginning, and I think it was Dimitri who mentioned the Freedom for Öcalan campaign. That's happening separately, and it is continuous, and it is important that it's continuous. But we mustn't imagine that we cannot go forward if Öcalan is not amongst us. We can go forward, and we will go forward. This isn't a situation of checkmate, it's rather a situation of stalemate. We are limited in what we can do because he is imprisoned, and because of the scenario in which he's imprisoned suggests that he's a terrorist. However, we can go forward, we should go forward. One of the most important things to remember is that in no way is nation state succeeding for us because we are subject to it, but it is succeeding for the dictators, and it is succeeding for people who are in positions of power. As far as they're concerned, their energy security and their mineral resources have been secured, and it doesn't matter that that comes at the cost of an enormous human crisis. So we need to change that. We need to change the way that that perspective is held. We need to change the way that people hear that. One of the dominant ways that we can change that is through media, because although I don't want to seem a bit pedantic, something that we do need to understand is that the apocalypse doesn't happen in one day and that's it. It happens over a gradual course of time. In third world countries, you can already see enormous changes that have happened in terms of ecology. Something Ziaur mentioned was the water crisis. It's enormous. It's not just limited to Rojava. In Rojava, of course, in Al-Hasaka and Serekani and Afrin, you've got an enormous water crisis because Turkey cuts off the water supplies to that area. How it manages to do that is through a series of dams. And these dams are created by dictators, and they're not even created in a solid way. Many of these dams are fragile in infrastructure. So, for example, the dam in Mosul, that dam has continuously been under threat since it was created. And it was created simply to commit ecological genocide, that is to basically make the land so arid that it's impossible for the people to exist in that space. That means if they cannot attack the Kurds and kill the Kurds through war, they'll kill them by basically making the space uninhabitable for them. Simultaneously, while that information comes out through Rojava, while we are available to view that information through Rojava because it's a free and liberated space, we don't quite hear the greater scope of that information throughout the rest of the Middle East. For example, in Rojava, that's the east of Kurdistan, we don't quite understand the ecological damage simply because that information is not made available publicly. We can look at, images through satellite and telescope to see the damage done, but we can't quite see it because the governments won't allow that information to be released. In Rojava, in the summer that's just passed, about 10,000 kilometers of land was burned by the government. That's forests deforested, that's swamps, marshlands, the whole lot burned, simply so they can remove the threat of Kurdish resistance. And every day about 250 tons of water is transferred from Kurdistan, the east, to Iraq by a series of dams again. It's gotten to a stage where one of the largest lakes in Iran, Lake Urumia, has in the last 3 years been reduced by 85%. The landowners are reduced to taking table water. That's table water is basically the water right at the reserve of the mountains. That means once that water is gone, there's no replacing it. That means that that space will then become arid and desert. Places throughout Rojhelat, you're seeing people having to evacuate their villages and their land because it's no longer survivable to stay in those conditions. And I think that in terms of Sarah Glynn's comments, how, you know, the ecological thing is what's being done that's good in Rojava is not being represented enough. Perhaps that's because of a lack of interest. I don't agree. I think that there should be an enormous interest in that, because as much as we're looking at the disasters, we should also be looking at our successes. We should be looking at what we are doing, and that acts as an encouragement. Why are we moving forward with this? Because I've seen this information that this is a good way to proceed. And I think to that end, it is really important to keep in contact with the Green Trees campaign and maintain the acknowledgement of what they're achieving. And I think to that end, also trying to maintain contact with the parties in the east of Kurdistan to the same extent, because they're sacrificing their lives against a dictatorship every day by putting out fires by hand. They're not given any equipment. They have to go up to the mountains with blankets, with towels, with bottles of water, with leaf blowers to try and put out the fires in these forests in eastern Kurdistan. And their sacrifice should not be in vain. That's something that we should be actively reporting on. That's about sufficient for me.
Very good. Jihad, do you wanna summarize?
Yeah. اول سونيا قلت ام جرق يعني سر برسكريكي او سر برسو او انه يعني ابقونن يعني بي سروكي بجبر افكاري سروكي جبر هن ابقونن بمشن ابقونن پیش روج پیش دهرن جبر خردبوني و افکارون هر ابقونن پروژه يعني في پروژه بريفا بدن و سر دینه گرای گوت سر میدیا سر بالا قدا سر میدیا گوت گرای یعنی امکانه بن بچه رنگی میدیا و معلوماتم بالا کن سر اکولوژی گو مثلا ایران الرجالات اللي قال لك برسكري كان ايكولوجي اللي ملات نظن جبار معلوماتنا وجبار فيها كي يعني جرينجيو ميديا جراك هابه از دبي فوت ثانيه ما كون بكره تي قصرنا لي سونيا منكم حاميش اشتغل بكره
بتذكرتنا
كوني بكورمجي بيجي تكوني بيجي
يعني ترم ويركرجي بكم ورا بشنم
اري دبن
عفوا منك.
Thank you again, Jihad, for all the work that you've been subscripted into
No,
doing.
actually, I'm not professional. I'm just saying the things that I almost can get. So I'm just
very good, man. You were conscripted without your non-voluntarily. Darnell, you wanted to say something.
Yes, I mean, you know, there's so many issues that are.
No, Darnell che biže, totally ti biže.
There's so many issues being addressed, but one thing occurred to me. Somebody said something about, you know, the water crisis. Can you see me? I just disappeared.
No, you just turned off your video.
I did. I just turned myself off. Okay, sorry. They talked about the water crisis, and I had to think. I said, well, I'm from Detroit, but I live in Berlin, and I'm also a journalist also. But I live in Berlin, and there's about 140, 50 different ethnicities here represented in Berlin. And for this, and in the same token, also in Detroit, there are many different nationalities, ethnicities represented. In fact, I've performed with Shivan Pever, noted Kurdish musician, and some other people too. And we'd have discussions, and once he had mentioned to me that he had a concert in Detroit. And I just want to just tell a small anecdote. I saw Yol from Yilmaz Güney, not in Europe, not in Turkey, but in Detroit, you know? And so, but this was before Shivan told me that he had a concert there, you know? So I went there to the movie and they had an intermission, but before they had the intermission, something was disturbing me because I heard people crying in the theater. So, and I didn't know there was going to be an intermission, but the lights went up. And so I immediately looked over my shoulder and I saw all of these women there. And obviously, you know, said they were Kurdish and Turkish women and they were crying. And then later on, when Shivan told me that he had a concert there, I understood. I said, wow, that's deep, you know? So here we have this group of people, you know, enduring, you know, the depiction of their suffering and being affected by it right in my own midst. And I'm in their midst, actually. And it kind of like pointed to the whole question of how international this suffering is, and you can't escape it, you know, and some of the parallels of other people, the indigenous population of America, the people who live there, and the water crisis, the deterioration of the infrastructure, all of that, all right, you know, is a problem and affects people. So when somebody says there's a water crisis at Rojava or wherever, you know, it strikes a nerve. You know, why am I here? Why am I a part of this group right now? Why am I participating? I'm participating because I grew up in an environment which kind of lended itself to other ethnicities, other nationalities, you know, and the whole question of oppression, being a victim of oppression myself, coming from an oppressed group of people, you know, and so it's very important that even the people who I unite with, because the Kurdish problem, the Kurdish oppression is my problem, you know, and people have always have articulated this very articulately, you know, about how they identify with the oppression of other people. And I certainly do. That's the reason why I'm here. And of course, everyone else here, you know, is here because of that fact. And that's something that needs to be accentuated, that needs to be expressed. When they talk about the water problem in Rojava, they got to talk about it in Flint, Michigan, and in Benton Harbor too, and across the United States, in Los Angeles. And there's a reason why this exists. Some of it is because of natural situations, but some of it is also because of exploitation of the resources and the land, bad management, on and on and on. So, you know, I unite with the people of Kurdistan and everywhere, from east to east, from east to east, west to west. It doesn't make any difference. You know, we have a common objective and a common enemy, you know, and we should stress that and move forward in a sense of solidarity. I'll say I like to thank Salah. Is that how he pronounces his name?
Salah, yeah, I think
for raising this whole question again, which I mentioned in the beginning, because believe it or not, here at my house right now, you know, my wife asked me, we were eating dinner rather, yesterday, and I was looking at her, and she said, what's on your mind? What are you thinking about? Why are you looking at me? And I did say, I was very honest, I'm looking through you. I'm thinking about shit. I'm thinking about the Ukraine. This is how much, because any miscalculation, any kind of like mistake being made, the wrong shot being fired in the wrong direction, or whatever, whoever's got whatever plan, you know, can lead to total disaster, you know, and it can have an impact. And so right now, as I'm talking, I'm thinking about these things, and I can't escape the reality of what's unfolding now. Now, I'm a guy who likes to say, I hope I'm wrong. You know, I spend a lot of time analyzing it, and I say, oh man, if this happens, oh, well, I hope I'm wrong. But the question is, you know, what is the real situation, regardless of the circumstance, regardless of the situation you're in, judging it and acting on it and understanding what's secondary and what's primary.
Jihad.
دارنيل سر كوري خوا قوم مدبك شوفان پرواردی لبرلين دبو از باورم قوت شوفان مرة قوتي از كونسيرت كملها لديروت باجاري وي أمريكا قوم ودر كونسيرتك تشكري قوت بري شوفان مرة ورقوا بيجا قوم من فيلم أو يلمس قوني أو ري أو يول من الودر ديت لباجاري خوا قوم وقدام فيلم قديم قال لك جن ديجريون إجبار أو فيلم بيعيش بو وإجبار فيها كي شوفان شو وادر يعني وادر ملات هي يعني سبا يعني في برسكري كردي وليكورا ودعم دكين وبحث مجور أوكر قلت از كردان از برسكريكي كردان از بير متضامن إجبار في برسكريكو منها يعني في برسكريكو اتهادا يعني إيمج جواكي راش جواكي ابن داست حمو برسكريكو خياك ودجميني ما حميان جياكا إجبار فيها كي وشو كاس برسكريكي كردان تعاطف دبن معناه كاس برسكريكي خورا تعاطف دبن برسكريكي ما حمياكن ودجميني ماجي حميان سيستما يعني.
All right, Debbie.
Thanks. I wanted to say a couple of things, just ending with something very concrete and specific, or practical, I guess. Here in the United States, where we have a really small Kurdish population, it's forced us to think a lot about how to build solidarity. And you know, one of the things that's actually been most effective for us is the reading groups that we have. We really attract a lot of people to these reading groups, and it shows that there's a yearning for people to be educated out there on a lot of these issues. And I wanted to applaud, Jeff, what you said, you know, just about the intersection between social ecology and sort of renewed social movements. So one of the things we're really interested here in is one, really building up communication between people who, all of you in Europe, who have already been doing a lot of work, and we are too, and actually being able to share the products of that labor, because we often feel like, you know, we hear about a study group or we hear about a lecture, you know, kind of after, either after it's happened or, you know, just shortly before. We have materials and you have materials, and it feels like everybody's often starting from scratch. So one of the really practical and concrete things that I wanted to just suggest is whether we could form a kind of a group, like a Dropbox or a shared Google space for documents and recordings. Just as an example, we did a pretty popular reading group of a series of sessions on how Rojava intersects with the Zabatista project. And it would be great, we recorded those sessions, and it would be great to be able to share that with folks. So I think that for me would be something, and I know you all have material. I know I've gotten materials from Simon Dubbins in the past, but you know, it helps us not sort of reinvent the wheel. And I think it would be great, in addition to some of the lists, like the reading lists that you're preparing, if we could actually share content in that way. So I just wanted to make that as a specific practical suggestion.
It's a great idea, and it speaks again back to Dimitri's first question and concern, which is what's going to be the infrastructure. And I think it's really important that we link up and we use this networks to not be repeating, but actually kind of reinforcing the work that we're doing. And so I think that's a great idea.
ده بيقول قوام كوري نام كوري دكنا لأمريكا قلت وين جي كورنا الأوروبا قلنا قوا أيام تخوزن يعني فو كوري ما أم جدون ناكن يعني عبارة تكليو كابي وأم كونن بن يعني خبراتي خو وتجربي خو هفدر مشاركة بكن جبار أم ناخوزن هر کسک سفره ده دست بی بکن و يعني ويب خوش به مثلا كونن ملفه چه بکن سر جوجل لسر ایمیل ام هفدر مشاركة بكن چسی من نراد کنه چه پرورده کنه جبار و یکی يعني قلت كونن تجربي هف استفاده بینن.
I think we had Haitian Muslim was going to try to intervene a while ago, and then he kind of got knocked off, but he's back on. So,
هیثم کرم
نهاد شيء كاس كبيج مات هبول مجي يعني في جروبي والناس زمان براني خواه راست يعني نا فكري وجالين بيا بريز وجالان وموري بوكشين بيانا نها ندقيسنا في حالي نزجبو فيتانيجي يعني لسر عردين الفيري يعني بابو 10 سالنا خساريات ديمقراطيك نكورم بيجن سادي سد بروجا وجالين بيك تينيا يون اما بنكه كي امكان بيجن دانكا خواه سر دانكنجي امريكانه ليكي راست يعني زمین چه بونه جهادی به کوبانی زانه دارنا کوبانی هاتوبنا چاندن مج حیمم جیرات بی دار حکومت یعنی هجبر دولت او هشمندی یعنی تشتکی کو که جواک رابک نو خالد کرد دو ام دکنشتا ما کری ما وکری هجبر وی او بی پروژن کزین کز راست تشتکی ما تشتکی پر نكري لأما بنجهي كي بربوشة وأمجي بخوجي از مطمئن ما يعني از كيف خوش بم كو أوقص إنسان يعني قانون أوليجري ما بكن قانون بمرة فكري خبر ما بكن كو حتى تبين هون نقاشة كي ونيجي يجي لسر عردك وأمجي لسر عردك أو ناجي بفكر يقاب أبي بمرة أولي كوربن أم قانون بيتر رولي خبليزن لسر عرده ونجبو ام وسطنك نجبو كردستان تاني يعني كلها ام الفيري الرقيبه الكوباني بالقوم شلوبك وام بكن باندورا خال بتوي روجلات نوفين هي هو كم فكر وكم بروجا وكم تشتكي رحي كنتشتو بدولة تشتكي بكي وتشتكي بسربك هذه راست تجربه خسارات ديمقراطيك حتى انها امنا بجن سدي سدا لأما يعني بروجاكي دسبيك ايماجي وك كزين كسك امجد خازن يعني جي خد مل ايكولوجي دا دفيدا بگرن از حمو كسن اخفتي ازوان سفاستكم براستيجي قانب انتبهكو بمعنوي بيجي مورالك بيجي جبو مالفيري عرضي جي ريزه وجي احتراميه.
He said that I have to emphasize that
Jihad, you're muted.
Oh, so he said without the works of Öcalan and Bokshi, we could not like reach to this stage now. So their ideas and their works were kind of very crucial for us in order to all do this everything on the ground. But we have to also know that the project on the ground, like the administration, is not perfect, and it's just like a basis. But this is basis, but we need also to kind of develop that always. So the project is not perfect, so we should also pay attention to that. He said also, like as a green tree project, we have doing a good job. We have like in terms of making the city green by Also, he said that we should also know that these ideas of we should not confine these ideas of Öcalan and Bokchin to the Kurdistan, and I think they should go beyond Kurdistan. They should go to the whole Middle East, and the idea that people can run and govern themselves without the state. So he said also that I'm very amazed that you all are supporting us, and I thank you so much for that. And I think we should always try to work together. We can do everything on the ground, and we can also we can also be in solidarity with each other in terms of we trying to work on the ground and you supporting us through your activism, through your ideas, so we can build something. We can build something free.
Okay, good. So I'm conscious of the time. We're running over 2 hours already. There are 3 more people who want to speak. Should we maybe think about having these be the last 3 interventions, and maybe we'll end with you, Stephen. Have you be the last, unless you want to say something that requires other people to answer to you.
No, that would be okay. I was kind of picking up on the threads of 3 previous speakers actually, but that's fine.
Okay, so I'm sorry, I can't remember your name, but 675751 had her hand up. Sorry about that. Please excuse me.
Mehri. My name is
Yeah,
Mehri.
Nahin.
It's easy, it's English name, kind of. What I was trying to say, to add some information to what Sonia say about the Rojhelat Kurdistan and why we can link that to political activists, Kurdish political activists in the present and in head of all of them, Serif Öcalan. Like in Kurdistan Rojhelat, as Sonia mentioned about how the Saddam make a Arab build in South Kurdistan and how it affects South Kurdistan. But also Iran is not rely on such things like Afrit River or any huge sea that they can rely on. But Iran rely on 1 million actually, 1 million shallow and deep wells in East Kurdistan. And those wells usually taken in bottom of the mountain. So that is drag the water in the mountain, and they make a dam, and that water would be redirected to the Persian part. And that is caused the mountain being actually dry. And that is why some of the mountain, as Sonia mentioned, that government deliberately put the fire on, and some of them with any little things with the heat of the summer is getting fired because it's been dry actually. So this is gradually degraded the of the Kurdistan, and the water is redirected to the Persian part, and people would be jobless. Research of Ismail Karhobi is a doctor for the ecology, showed that 80% of the villages of East Kurdistan and Balochistan being demolished. They leave the village because they depend on the agricultural and things like that. But as the water is not there anymore, they're jobless. So they go to the cities for the job. And in city, it's estimated 22 million people from those villages move to the city, and they're jobless. So when they're jobless and the government deliberately ignoring them, so many of them finish their degree, master and the doctorate, but they don't have a job. What they do, they go to the Kolber, which I think it is familiar to everyone. What does Kolber mean? It means basically they go to the other part of the South Kurdistan, they buy tea, sugar, TV, very simple things, and they take it to sell it in Iran, not even in East Kurdistan, in Iran. So it is very pretty much okay for Iranian government to shoot them because they say, oh, they bring illegal things. What is the illegal things? The illegal things is a drug that actually Iran deliberately bring it to the East Kurdistan and South Kurdistan. The drug that Iran sell to the East Kurdistan and South Kurdistan is pretty much free because deliberately Iranian government want to damaging the young people's mind. And that is illegal. Not when the Kolbar are going to the East Kurdistan to bring the TV, to bring the tea, to bring clothes to sell it in Iran. So it is, they turn back what is Kurdish people are doing, what they actually doing to damaging the society, the Kurdish people. But they very happy to say Kurdish people selling illegal things, which is that what I describe, what is the Kurdish people illegal thing do it. But what is according to Iranian government legal when they selling a drug and bad things to the not only East Kurdistan but South Kurdistan, according again to the nature that dam that wells that Iranian government make 1 million wells deep and shallow in East Kurdistan. It is cost dry the yard and lots of jobless people, and 80% of the village been moved to the city, and as I described, that they don't have work except go to the Kolbari. But also that is why people are frustrating. And last summer it was a huge demonstration in Balochistan and Kurdistan because they know that their water is still from Balochistan and East Kurdistan to the Persian part. And Sonia pretty explained every day 150,000 liters of water from East Kurdistan are sailing to the city of Iraq. I don't know, to Basra, which is Iran government tried to satisfy that area to voting for the puppet that they wanted in Iraq. In other hand, their own people, which is East Kurdistan and Balochistan, are thirsty, not only for agriculture, but human actually doesn't have fresh water. That's a huge problem in East Kurdistan. And when the people are actually just active for this, they put them in a prison and they say, oh, they're involved with the political group. So as soon as they say that, it is okay to hang them. It is okay to executing them. And every single day we have an execution activists in East Kurdistan. But somehow it doesn't came out to the news in newspaper in Europe, in newspaper in anywhere in the world, because you know why? The newspaper and those people, they supposed to bring the news to the people and hear it. It's not their favorite. It is just what is favoriting them. It is what they want rather than what is actually happened in Middle East. But okay, they can turn a blind eye of it. But when this is continue, people are leaving the, not only East Kurdistan, leaving the Iran, leaving the Turkey, leaving the Iraq. They came to Europe, then that would be costing Europe a lot. It could be, I don't know what they call it, that could be cost them a lot if all those people immigrate to the Europe. So in the end of the day, they should find the solution for that. And the solution for that is the independent Kurdistan. It's freedom of Öcalan, because you cannot make all demographic change and all these unnatural things to the nature and you think it is okay. But according to the lots of study, demographic change is a genocide against of any group of the people when you make it and people live on agricultures and live in the things that they live in the village and you take away that from them. That is genocide, because it's deliberately you make the people to change their natural way. I'm adding one story in my own life. In my village, we live in a little village, and the government asked us to move the village, move from that village, go to the anywhere you want to do, because we make a dam. 16 villages been gone under the water because they make one dam, and that dam water go to the Persian part. That is only one incident, but bear in your mind, there is 1 million, is a record in research, 1 million wells being made in East Kurdistan, and there is thousands of them, they make it since the revolution. So that is what I just wanted to add it, and all of them happen to the Kurdish people, and our leader is Öcalan. If as long as he is in a prison, it means all those things is happen. But we need all the people around the world supporting this to free for Öcalan, because free for Öcalan, it means this genocide would be ended. And if anyone disagree with the genocide, they have to raise their voice against of that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Jihad, you want to?
مدخواست كوافلت كردي زوني تكوني مثلا برنگي كردي تبيجي تشغوت جبر
سوراني دزان بيلم
اري سوراني عندكن هرس عندكن
تمام گركم بو بلم لا إيست كردستان السونيا إشارة فكر كشون سد أولين شون كدسي فكر كسد دروس بكريت دام دروس بكريت لا جنوب كردستان ولا باشور بو كأو عرب بيلتبو ببعيسيو كأو منطقة وكان كرد كاري كشاورزي أوانيت يا أكر وشك بيت وأوش بنا بعيسيو بو كوخلق لو منطقة عوز بن دواتركي تركيا وسوريا كوبي أويان كرد للرجالات ولا للرجاوة وباشور باكورا دسيان فكر بلام إيران وكو أفريد ريفيدي نبوك صديقي كان ها صديق دروستا بلكو أو 1 مليون دانا بيري دروس كردو ڕۆژهەڵاتە ئەو 1 ملیۆن دانە بیرە لە خوارەوە چێوەکانە دروستەکەن کە ئاوی چێوەکان بێنێتە خوارەوە وەختی ئاوەکە دێتە خوارەوە سەدێکی پێ دروستەکەن و ئاوەکە ئەبن بۆ منتەقەی فارسەکان هەر ڕۆژ 150,000 لیتر ئاوی ڕۆژهەڵاتی کوردستان ئەچێ بۆ بەسرە بۆ ئەوەی ئێران بەنەفیتەکەی بۆ ئێران ئەوەی لە بەسرە و ئەوانە ڕێئی ئەدەن بە ئەو پۆپێتانە بۆ کەسانە کە ئێران پێخۆشە چونکو ئەگەر ئەو ئاوە ئێران نەیدا بە بەسرەوانە ئەو منتەقە هیچێک ئاوی نییە بەڵام ئاوی ڕۆژهەڵاتی کوردستانە کە ئەدرێت بە منتەقەی عەرەبەکان لە عێراقا ئەوە فقط بەشێک لە ئاوەکەی بەشی زۆرەکەی ئەچێتەوە بۆ منتەقەی فارسەکان ئێستا دێهاتەکانی ڕۆژهەڵاتی کوردستان و بلوچستان 85% لە خەڵکی دێهاتەکان چۆڵیان کردووە چون بۆ شارەکان و ئەو 85% گەنجەکانیان زۆربیان یا ماستەری هەیە یا دیگری هەیە یا دکتۆرایان هەیە بەڵام کاریان پێ نادەن چونکو کوردن چیەکەن ئەچین بۆ کۆڵبەری وەختێکیش ئەچین بۆ کۆڵبەری بە معلوماتی ئێران و بە حەقێک بەخۆی ئەدا ئێران ئەڵێ ئەمانە شت قاچاخەکەن قاچاخی کۆڵبەرەکان چیە چایە تەلەڤیزیۆنە لیباسە لە باشوورۆ ئەیهێنن بۆ ڕۆژهەڵات بەڵام ئەوان چونکو ئەڵێن شتێکی غەیرە قانونیە ئیدی چونکو غەیرە قانونیە حق بخوایان دەن کۆڵبەرەکان بکەن کە هەموو ڕۆژێک کۆڵبەر ئەکوژێت لە چێوەکانە ئەو کۆڵبەرانە 80 کیلۆ لەگەڵ خۆیانە هەڵەگرن فقط بۆ ئەوەی غەزا بن بە مناڵەکانیان ئەیهێرن لە ئیست کوردستان لە ڕۆژهەڵاتیش نایفرۆشن لە شوێنە فارسەکان دێن ئەیفرۆشن چون شوێنە فارسەکان پارە دەرن و دێن ئەو شتانە ئەکڕن تێگەی جا دواترەکەشی ئەگەر فعالیتێکی سیاسی دەست پێ بکە ینی بڵین تەزاوراتێ دەست پێ بکە خۆپیشاندانێک دەست پێ بکە ئەلێهی ئەوەی کە بۆچی ئاوەکانی ئێمە ڕێگاکانی ئاوەزە ئەچێ بۆ منتەقەی فارسەکان بۆ کۆڵبەرەکانەکوژێ ئەو کەسانە ئەخرێنە زیندان بە ناوی فعالیتی سیاسی و لە قانونی یاسای ئێرانشە مادەم تۆ سیاسی بووی حەقی ئەوە هەیە ئیعدام بکەن بۆ یەکانە هەر ڕۆژە کوردی ڕۆژهەڵاتی کوردستان ئیعدام بکرێت بە ناوی ئەوەی فعالیتی سیاسی محاربە بە ناوی ئەوەی فعالیتی سیاسیان کردووە بۆ پارتێکی سیاسی کوردستان و دواترەکەشی ئەوەی کە ئەو 1 ملیۆن بیرە کە هەڵیان کەندووە ئەو 80% دێکەن چۆڵ بە دواترێت داستانکی ژیانی خۆمە باس کرد کێمە لە دەیەکا بووین هینێکیان دروست سەدێکیان دروست کرد بە ئێمەیان وتوتیان چۆڵ بکەن 16 دانە دێکەوتە ژێرە و ئاوە فقط ئەو ئاوە خێرەکەی ئەو بکۆی بکەن و بینێرن بۆ منتەقەی فارسەکان ئەوە 1 دانە نمونەیە بەڵام ئێستا لە ڕۆژهەڵاتی کوردستان 1000 دانە لەوانە هەیە جا هەر 1 دانە حەسەب کە 16 دانە دێکەوت بتەژیری کە زۆریان زۆرتر لە 16 دانە دەیە حەزم کرد هەر ئەوە ئاتکەم بە معلوماتەکەی ستۆنیا کەوتی سپاس
باشە ئەس هیڤیدۆرم هەڤال هەیسەم و هەڤال باش فهم کرد
کوردستان
بله سپاس جبو همون ارین و خافتن إن مستوى فلا فر بنرخو قيمتهم قالك تشتانين زمان لأز خازم بكرداسي چند تشتید دوباره نکن ما مستنهرجی هاد آنی زمان روشک روجلات کردستان یعنی بگشتی ملت کرد ده 100 ساله 21 ده براستی روبروی قرکرنک یعنی قرکرنکی فیزیکی قرکرنک چاندی لكيلك ويجي لتنشتا ويجي قركرنك لسر اكولوجيا تكرن ايكوسايد هيا يعني حمو جيانا بان جواكين كل بي جغرافيا جيان دكنجي براستي ما ترسيه كي برما زندايا تبي حمو جريان قركرنك وما بحث كرنا فيزيكية وشاندية ولسر خزايجي يلك كريارن هوفانا تكرن ام بيجن العفرينة جي دارن كو عمري 100 سالن تنقد كرن دارن زيتونة افجي يعني ملكي دنجي يه برسجريكي قركرن وانا قركرن واملتي كرد بقشتي ام يعني از خازم بيجم هرم رجلات نوین براستی کریزا اوی يعني دا سالاداری آوان سیستمین توتالیتر اوین لسر دا سالات براستی جیانا وان جواکن هایی ملتن هایی خستیا مترسیه کی پرمزن لی اف ملکه نظام ورقري لا استشرى هازم هرم أويدن نقطة
Galax boss. So she said, thank you very much for your all valuable opinion. I really appreciate that. I will talk briefly, just as Mamusta Nahri talked about the situation in Rojalat. I will talk a bit about since 1 century, the Kurdish people are facing cultural and physical genocides, but now they are also ecological genocide. It's like ecocide. For example, in Afrin, the Turkish state is cutting the trees which age about 100 years, age 100 years, and the Turkish state is cutting all these trees down. The region of Middle East under this dictatorship and fascist regimes had made the lives and the destiny of its people very miserable and in very dangerous situation.
خلاص نقطة دو يمين از خازم بيجم يعني بقر نسر مجاري ما يرو فكرين رامان وجلان ومراي بوكشين ايكولوجيا جواكي وكوشينا جواكان خازم بيجم يعني براستي د نوفندا فكرين يعني هردو عنداجي فكرة جواكي هي يعني جواك جروشة كبار بروشة كدن بابن يعني جواك جروشة ببن وك أوبجا ببن وك سوبجي يعني جرنجي جواك كو باسيفن ببن جواكن أكتيف يعني د فلسفة واندا نوبند فلسفة واندا جواك هي أف جواكن هي كو همو انرژی وان رابن سیاست بکن خبری خستن بکن افجی هدی وقت مدل روجاوا کم زیده پیک هاتیه وقت شاو جواک الترناتیفا دبینن سازین الترناتیف آوادکن یعنی هر تم لبنده دولت یا جیل همبر بندواري سيستم نامينن أفجفات برستي هفال هنا دكتورك بحثا برسا أف دبيجن يعني قلت تشت أن تخازن تشيروكن أريني جهابن تشيروكن بوزيتيف جهابن راسي قالك تشيروكن بوزيتيف هنا بروجين الترناتيفين ديمقراطيك بوزيتيف هنا اللي دباكو دواري راقهاندن دا بلاوازي بقالسي آگاهی دگینن درفا خوازن بریا في بلاتفورمي نها اف جواكا مي اف جواتا نها چه بويا براستي وقت بلاتفورمه كي بي كو هاي مجهب هبي بلاتفورمه كي كو ام بقاربن براستي دواره خویاکرن نشاندان visibility جيرد بيجن في بروجين كل سر عرضه وهدي آواد بن يعني تشتن شروكن بوزيتيفن بريا في بلاتفورمي ام حمو آگاهیان به هفرا پارو بکن کال کداری چه دبی چاوا دبی ام نرینه هف بگرن هف پار ام بچرنگی وان پروژیان پیش خینن و ام دستک بکن سپاس.
Yeah. And she continued, I would like to talk about Öcalan's and Bokshin's idea of social ecology. They both emphasize on the society. They want to transform society from object to subject and from passive society to an active society. Furthermore, they want to use people's energy to practice politics. And we have seen that slowly in Rojava that people are building alternative institutions and alternative forms of economy, and they don't wait for the state in order to do that job for them. And just as one of people said, I think Sarah said that we need to hear more positive story. She says that there are positive stories and positive alternatives, but because of the media, there is no that coverage. And that's why we need to use this as a platform in order to make the project on the ground visible and share information and exchange opinion in order to develop the project on the ground. And yeah. Okay.
Stephen, why don't we start wrapping up? You can with your intervention. I also think it's important that we figure out a way to formally establish this forum. So figure out a way that we can also be signed on to the forum, which we can do as well before we officially say goodbye. But Stephen, it's your word.
Thank you, Jeff. Yeah, I was really struck by really interesting conversations, and really struck by the expressions about water shortages and drought being a particular key issue. And I'll just made me think of one example. Actually, in Bristol, we have a group called Kiptik. Kiptik started off with an alternative sports team, which were they were playing football with the Zapatistas, and during the 1990s, and from that they formed this international solidarity group to support water infrastructure. That was decided that was the main thing that would be of practical use in supporting the Zapatistas. And I think this kind of that leads me to some of the points Debbie made the point about not reinventing the wheel. There is a lot of expertise out there. So Kiptik they raise something like probably in dollars up to $10,000 a year since the 1990s. And I suppose from that experience, they probably learned a few things about international solidarity. One thing they learned about the water projects was that even though you need enthusiasm and numbers and money, actually that wasn't the most important thing about the what they realized after a while. A couple of the main lessons was one that you need people that know about hydrology. You need a certain amount of expertise in order to be useful. Obviously a lot of that expertise is on the ground as well, but what you don't need is too much technocracy, so that you're implementing solutions that are relying upon specialist equipment which can't be replaced, or complex technologies that are not able to be maintained appropriately. So that was an important thing. It might sound like an obvious point, but I think it was something that was quite important. The other thing was around how you put that support in. So they sort of became aware that there was a kind of political and social context for this. You didn't want to be giving support immediately to the most prominent, or maybe the communities that had the most contact with the West, for example, because they may not be the places where the situation is most desperate. And where the impact can be greatest. So there were some important things there that Kiptich learned with sort of working with the Zapatistas over the years. I suppose that makes the point around the connections between the discussion of ideas, some of the conversations we're having now, some of the discussions around the reading group, and also the sort of practical outputs, and again drawing upon the sort of wealth of experience that's out there in order to do that. The other thing I was going to say, it's been great. It's really nice for me to meet Gulistan, because we've been communicating by email for quite a while, and from Haitian from Green Braids, and that seems to me like a really useful group to be working with in terms of the ecological aspect of solidarity, because it deals with food sovereignty, it deals with climate change, it deals with air pollution, and in a way the climate and the issue of drought is partially addressed. I suppose what you can't do is just, having said that you can learn from other contexts, what obviously you can't do is just take a solution from one part of the world, one political and social context, and try and transplant that in another context. But then, that's where those discussions to inform the solidarity is really important. Yeah, I think that's probably as much as I want to say about that example, maybe trying to make that link between the ideas and the practical outputs, which I think is hopefully what we'd be trying to achieve. So yeah, I think that probably leads us to where we go from here, in terms of people's commitments and abilities to carry on. I mean, I'm thinking a monthly meeting might be good, but I don't know what other people are thinking about this. And I said the other thing to think about is it would be useful to hear from people when the most appropriate time to get together would be as well, and how we want to take this forward. It might be that we set up, we probably will need some kind of online forum for this as well, because there's a lot of us to participate, and there's certainly other people that we could invite to be involved as well.
Yeah, there were several people who mentioned that they couldn't make it today, but they're very interested in following the proceedings. So yeah, I think that some of the questions, like with respect to like some of the stuff we could probably do over email in terms of figuring out when to meet again, whether or not a monthly meeting makes sense, maybe every 6 weeks, somewhere between monthly and every 6 weeks, I think makes sense. And with respect to the times, I think that's something that we could poll people who are interested in participating in. Something like that. No, Estella, do you want to say anything concluding with respect to, in particular, Dimitri had asked me about formally establishing the forum and how we would and et cetera, how to go about doing that. You're muted. You're muted.
Yeah, well, my main point is that I do not think we can set this up as yet, okay? I do think there has to be more discussions, more thought given to it, okay? Because it's quite a big question. We have the peace in Kurdistan in Kambak, okay? We have a website you know, which covers some of the points that people raised. And my concern is that maybe they have never actually thought about what is behind, for example, that we do in interviews for the past 1-2 years, mainly done by Connor and by yourself, you know, on movements. For example, the question was raised, why do we not, there's Sudan, there is all these other countries, there is, for example, as Mary mentioned, the Baluch, and so on. Now the connections that we were trying to build as a basis of that go back years, okay? So we have, Kambak came out of the peace in Kurdistan in order to build networks like this, yeah, connections in all parts of the regions which are affected by the criminalized organization. Now, the same method we are trying to do here on ecology and on other issues. So what I'm saying is, what we are trying to now do is to specifically focus on certain areas where other people have already done work, like Debbie in America, you know, with the Rojava campaign, or, you know, movements, for example, in Rojava itself. So that we build a broader platform. That is the thing. So through media work, through discussions, through special webinars, through, for example, as you know, I mean, Sarah suggested, to immediately publish the stories, okay, that came out of this meeting. For example, to do specific interviews, yeah. So it's difficult at this stage to make a kind of, you know, to say this is the setup. It will have to emerge from the different discussions. I mean, people can think about it, okay? I haven't got a proposal. If there's a proposal, for example, from Amber seems to have very much ideas of organizing and so on. Stephen, you know, I think it's an open platform for me at this stage, okay? Which should be mainly focused on media work, on publicizing what people are already doing, and creating the connections, you know, with one word, more interviews with people online, you know, maybe individual interviews with the people who are now on the platform, with, you know, Daniel, together with Saleh, etc., etc. There's ways and means to spread the news and to publicize them on other websites, you know, on social media, etc., etc. You know, to set the ground, you know, but I can't see how we, you know, I mean, it's not another big group that does specific work. It's moving, it's a moving thing, okay? So, I mean, these are my comments to that, okay?
Yeah.
I mean, we can, you know, obviously focus on 2 or 3 areas which we cover, you know, but it will be interesting, for example, to have just with the different organizations from Rojava, you know, a meeting, you know, a project where we can have a webinar. So different ideas that came out of this discussion. And I do think we should think about it and make the decision to propose them, you know, for the next meeting.
Excellent. Okay. Yeah, we've been at it for over 2.5 hours. So I think unless anyone has anything urgent to say, I think we can conclude and continue the conversation through email. Yeah, Mehi?
Add one suggestion to what Stella say. What I get, what Stella say, all of them are right, but I don't know what is the point of this. It wouldn't be meaningless if you have a meeting like this, but wouldn't be public, go to the public. basically, if all the people like me and you sitting together and talking, we all understanding each other. It could be for after a few times, it would be boring because it is repeating, but it would not be boring when it is publicized in the people that, like, say what you get the conclusion, you interview with the people, you put it in the newspaper, and people in the world, in Europe, can see this problem. They know they cannot ignore what happened in the Middle East. What happened in a small area like Kurdistan, they cannot ignore it when they know tomorrow the same people that they've been ignored are coming here and make a problem for them. So if you publicize this, then people would be more aware. If we didn't be publicized, people cannot hear, and we would be bored of our repeat prescription. Thank you.
I mean, if I might come back to that, okay? Because, you know, we have to start with the people that we have already around us and with the possibilities we have. We have the whole of the Turkish-Kurdish television, for example, all right? Who could publish this, and that then goes through to the English papers, yeah? A big forum that we organize, for example, with Sturk TV or Media TV, or Sarah can organize, okay?
Dimitri.
A forum discussion where all of you are invited, you know, on the media, on Media TV, that goes around Europe, and that is in Kurdish, Turkish, and English, okay? And we can spread the news everywhere, okay? For example, I mean, there is ways and means of using already the Turkish-Kurdish successes, if you like, you know, to go, if we cannot get it through the BBC or through some bloody other major news organization, okay? So we are limited to that, what we can do. We are in the activist trend. We can only go through social media. No, we try different ways. We tried through the Kurdish. It's a major achievement. You have a major achievement in Europe on the media and in the Middle East. I mean, our interviews, our 200 interviews, plus others from Jeff and Connor, you know, are going around the Turkish television, the Kurdish and the Middle East, and even Arab have now translated it, okay? So maybe this might sink through in Turkey sometimes, or in other parts of the world, okay? So I do think we should push on that, because we need, of course, the Kurdish and Turkish public as well at the same time on board for everything what we are doing, okay?
Dimitri.
Yeah, so I think
you're muted. No, Dimitri's muted. You're not muted, Estella.
I suggest three things. One, that we agree here, all of us who do agree, to have another get together 6 weeks from now on a Sunday, beginning an hour later, please, than we started today, that the meeting not exceed 3 hours, and that we set up a facilitating committee to work out and synthesize some of the proposals that were put forward here today under the rubric of Jeffrey's three main mandates, objectives, and that this facilitating committee consists of Jeffrey, Estella, Connor, Amber, and Stephen Hunter.
Sounds good to me. I don't know if there's any objections.
Maybe Connor, you will comment.
Thank you. Yeah. Okay. If everyone likes that,
that's good.
Yeah, perfect. then I don't know. So Estelle, do you have any last words?
Amen.
I mean, I'm very hopeful. And I hope that everybody will coordinate. And it's a wonderful people up there. So I don't know what the problem is. Okay, everybody
No.
has very good ideas and can come up with them and should contribute. And I'm very happy that our friends from Iranian Kurdistan in particular. Maybe we can invite the Baluch next time, which we have already. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm also very enthusiastic.
Sarah, not Iranian Kurdistan, Rojava Kurdistan.
Iranian Kurdistan. Oh, that's
I'm also very enthusiastic about.
I'm Kurdish, not Fars.
Careful. What Öcalan has done was fantastic. That he's in prison. Well, so well. What? Okay. He will get out of it. They are not going to dare to kill him, and he's doing quite well still. To be frank, why are we always so concerned? Okay. All right. He has given us what he can give us. Okay. So, he does as long as he does. A little bit.
Bye.
Okay.
I can see Sarah has a hand up.
Okay.
Bye, Dimitri.
Yeah, it was simply a practical thing that it would be nice to share emails, but we need everybody's permission. So if we just ask people now if everybody's okay for sharing emails, that's all before we all go out.
مازیوەر و گوڵستان سیدۆمەتۆ دەخوازی ئیمێڵی تۆ بە شوێنم ژبوو ساراگلین
بس گرێکتونە
Tamam.
Not problem.
They're happy to share their emails. Zior?
زیوار چویه از بارم
زیور بس گرێک internet.
Oh, okay. Yeah, Sarah, I'll send you Zior's details as well. And Mehri Jan, ما تو مشكلة هي email كي تو بشنم بو أوان?
No, of course not. No.
And Mehri's happy as well.
رئيسم جون إيتاج برسكريك هنا إيميل تاعو بكي
Tamam. Yeah. They're happy to give you the emails. Yeah. So I think they're all happy to. And
But I was just thinking that everybody would want everybody's, not just for me.
Well, I'm just confirming that they're happy to do so.
Yeah.
So
But if everybody's is shared with everybody, that's.
Yeah, I'm happy to make the list that I was using visible to everybody. The only issue is there are some people who have showed up at the meeting who I didn't actually email. So it was because other people emailed it forward because we told people they could forward it. So if people could actually email Estella or me or Stephen, just so that we have a list of everyone who has come today, so that we can add them to the list to make sure that they will continue being in contact with us. Okay. All right. I think that we can adjourn. No.
yeah, I think I'm going to stay behind so that I can save the recording.
Okay. Excellent.
Bye, everyone.
Well, thank everyone. Thank you all for coming and for participating. What's been a very stimulating discussion. And thank you, Stephen. And I'm very enthusiastic, Amber, about potential for a confluence and affinity between what you're already doing and what we're trying to do here. So I think that's great. So thank you very much. Thank you, everybody.
Hafiz.
All right. Okay.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Merci. Au revoir.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.